The grocery store on Maple Avenue was the kind of place where nothing ever happened. It was the kind of store where retired men argued about which brand of coffee was better, and young mothers compared cereal prices, and kids begged for the sugary boxes with cartoon characters on the front. It was ordinary in the best possible way that Tuesday afternoon in November was no different, or so it seemed. Marcus Reed was 36 years old, broad-shouldered and quiet, the kind of man who moved through the world without taking up too much space, even though physically he easily could have. He worked construction during the week and coached youth soccer on weekends, and every Tuesday afternoon without fail, he brought his 8-year-old daughter Chloe to do the grocery run together. It was their thing. It had been their thing since her mother left 4 years ago. Not dramatically, not with a big scene, just a Tuesday morning when Marcus came home and found a note and an empty closet. So now Tuesday groceries were sacred. Chloe picked the cereal, always something with too much sugar that Marcus pretended to object to, and Marcus pushed the cart, and they talked about her week and her teacher and whatever book she was currently reading. And for 1 hour every Tuesday, the world was exactly the right size. This particular Tuesday, Chloe had chosen a box of cornflakes. Not the sugary kind, just plain cornflakes, because her class had been learning about nutrition, and she had decided, with the full conviction of an 8-year-old who has just discovered something new, that cornflakes were the smartest breakfast choice a person could make. Marcus had smiled at that and put the box in the cart they were rounding, the corner of aisle 7, when everything changed. The man came from nowhere. He was young, maybe 25, wearing a dark jacket, and his eyes had the particular kind of wild stillness that Marcus had seen once before in his life, years ago, on a job site when a man had come in looking for someone who owed him money. It was the look of a person who had made a decision they could not take back. The man grabbed the woman who had been standing 2 feet away from Marcus, examining a shelf of breakfast items. She was blonde, well-dressed, somewhere in her late 30s or early 40s, and she made a sharp sound as the man's arm went around her, and something dark and metallic appeared in his other hand. "Nobody move," the man said. His voice was not steady. That was the first thing Marcus noticed. A steady voice is dangerous because it means the person holding it has made their peace with what they are doing. An unsteady voice means the person is still fighting with themselves. Marcus went completely still. He did not reach for his phone. He did not make any large movement. He simply stood with his cart, the box of cornflakes sitting on top of the groceries, and he breathed. Chloe was behind him, slightly to his left, and without turning around, he reached one hand back and found her shoulder and pressed it gently, a signal they had developed without ever discussing it, the way fathers and daughters develop signals that meant stay still and stay quiet and trust me. He felt her small body go still beneath his hand. The man with the weapon was sweating. He kept looking toward the front of the store, which told Marcus he was waiting for something or someone, and that whatever plan he had made had either gone wrong or was still unfolding. The blonde woman in his grip was doing something remarkable. She was not screaming. She was breathing deliberately, visibly, in and out through her nose, and her eyes were moving around the aisle with the calm assessment of someone who is frightened but not panicking. Marcus recognized that too. He had seen it in people who had trained themselves for hard moments. She caught his eye. He gave the smallest possible nod. Then the man with the weapon looked directly at Marcus and said, "You don't move or she dies. You understand, me and Marcus did something that nobody in that aisle expected." He said, "I understand you not. I understand the threat." He said, "I understand you," and his voice was low and even and carried no challenge in it whatsoever. The man blinked. It was a small thing, that blink, but Marcus caught it. He kept his voice at the same level, the level you use when you are talking to someone standing on a ledge, when every word has to land softly or not at all. He said, "Whatever happened today, it did not have to end here." The man's jaw tightened. Marcus did not look at the weapon. He looked at the man's face, at the place just between his eyebrows, because looking at someone's eyes directly when they are cornered can feel like a challenge. But looking at that middle point gives the impression of full attention without the pressure of a stare. He said, "I have a daughter standing behind me. She is 8 years old. Today is our grocery day." He paused. He did not say this to appeal to the man's sympathy. He said it to make himself real, because the most dangerous thing that happens in moments like this is when the people in the room stop being people and become objects, obstacles, problems. He continued, I am not going anywhere. I am not going to do anything. I am just asking you to think for 1 minute. The man's breathing was ragged. The woman in his grip had gone very still. Not the stillness of fear, but the stillness of someone who understood that stillness was the correct response right now. Then, from somewhere behind Marcus, in a voice so small and so clear it cut through everything like a bell, Chloe said, Please don't hurt anybody. 3 seconds of absolute silence. The man looked past Marcus at Chloe, and something in his face, something underneath all the desperation and the bad decisions and the wild, frightened energy, cracked open just slightly. His arm loosened around the woman by a fraction. Marcus did not move. He did not lunge forward. He did not try to be a hero in the action movie sense of the word. He simply stood there, steady as a wall, and let the silence do its work. Then the woman spoke. She said very quietly to the man holding her, What do you actually need? Not what do you want? What do you need? The man stared at her. She said, My name is Diana Calloway. I run a company and I have resources, and I am asking you what you actually need right now, because I do not think it is this. Her voice was remarkable, not frightened, not commanding, just direct in the way of someone who has spent decades in rooms full of difficult problems and learned that most of them have a solution. If you can first establish what the actual problem is. The man's face worked through something. His arm dropped. The dark metallic thing lowered. 3 seconds later, 2 police officers came through the far end of the aisle. Someone had called from the front of the store, and the man did not run. He sat down on the floor of the grocery aisle, right there between the cereal boxes and the oatmeal, and he put his face in his hands. Marcus turned around immediately and crouched down and pulled Chloe into his arms. She had her face pressed against his shoulder, and he could feel her shaking, not crying, just shaking the way bodies release what they have been holding. He held her and said nothing for a moment, just held her. It is okay, he said finally. You are okay. She pulled back just enough to look at him. Daddy, she said, her voice very small. I was scared. I know, he said. He pushed the hair back from her face. I was scared too. She looked at him with those serious eyes, but you did not act scared. He thought about that. He said, being scared and acting scared are 2 different things. Chloe, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is just stay calm so the people around you can stay calm too. She considered this with the full weight that 8-year-olds bring to things they are deciding whether to believe. Then she nodded, once, as though filing it away. The next 20 minutes were police and statements and the controlled chaos of an incident being processed. Marcus gave his account, kept one hand on Chloe's shoulder the entire time. The woman, Diana Calloway, was a few feet away giving her own statement, and when she was done, she walked directly over to Marcus. She was composed in the way that people are composed, when composure is something they have built deliberately over many years and not something that came easily. She said, that was either the bravest thing I have ever seen or the most insane. He almost smiled, little of both, he said. She looked at him for a moment, then she looked at Chloe. She said to Chloe, What you said stopped everything. You know that, right? Chloe looked at her shoes. I just said what I was thinking, she said. Diana Calloway nodded slowly. She said, That is what brave people do. She reached into her coat pocket and produced a card, and she held it out to Marcus. My company is always looking for people who stay calm when everything else isn't. She said that was not a sales pitch. That was an observation. You think about it. Marcus looked at the card. He was a construction worker. He had calluses on his hands, and a second-hand truck, and a grocery list that included cornflakes because his daughter had learned about nutrition at school. He was not the kind of person who got offered things like whatever was implied by that card. He took it anyway, not because of ambition, because his daughter was watching him, and he wanted her to see a man who received things graciously. Thank you, he said. Diana Calloway looked at him one more second. Then she looked at Chloe and said, You have a good father, and she walked away on the drive home. Chloe was quiet in the back seat. In the way she got when she was processing something large. About halfway home, she said, Daddy, he looked at her in the rearview mirror. What made you think of what to say in there? He thought about it, honestly. He said, I did not think of it. I just knew that the most important thing was to make him feel like a person and not a problem, because people who feel like problems do not have any reason to make good choices, but people who feel like people sometimes do. Chloe looked out the window at the passing street. She said, Is that something Grandpa taught you? He felt the familiar ache that came with her mentioning his father, who had been gone 6 years now, but whose voice Marcus still heard sometimes in the quietest moments. Yeah, he said he taught me that. There was a pause. Then Chloe said, Daddy, yeah, can we still have the cornflakes for breakfast tomorrow? He laughed, a real laugh, the kind that comes from deep in the chest and has relief mixed into it. Yes, he said, we can absolutely still have the cornflakes. She smiled at the window, and Marcus drove them home through the November evening, his daughter safe in the back seat, a stranger's business card in his pocket, and the understanding, quiet and certain as anything he had ever known, that the most powerful thing he carried into that grocery store had not been strength or size or any particular skill. It had been the simple decision to stay human when everything around him was pushing toward fear. His father had called it keeping your feet wherever you are. His father used to say, whatever is happening, keep your feet. Marcus kept his eyes on the road. He kept his feet. If this story moved you, please give it a like and share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Subscribe so you never miss a story like this, and leave a comment. Tell us about a moment when staying calm changed everything. We read every one.